Hello, and welcome to Sketching and Scribbling. I am your host, Sarah Emptage, and today we are working with a two-camera format, so you can hopefully see what I'm drawing, and occasionally I will cut back so you can see me as I speak. So drawing is something that I've spent most of my life being terrible at. I learned to draw when I was in college, and I hadn't drawn before at all, but I decided to take a class on Intro to Drawing. I started the class without knowing what I was doing, and by the end of it, I could draw things like this and this. The first thing I'm going to draw today, I have given a source image in the handouts that you can use to draw along with me. So we're going to talk a little bit about brain science, actually. When you are first born, you don't really see objects. You see all of the different kinds of light, different colors, like coming at you. But you don't really know what any of this information means yet. So your brain begins organizing as you begin discovering the world. You figure out that certain patterns of light coming at your eyes mean certain types of shapes, and they can be kind of predictable. And when something's close, it looks larger. When it's further away, it's smaller. But that is all you start to know what those things mean, and so your brain summarizes a lot because there's so much information being processed by your brain all the time. So this summarization process, which we're also experiencing outdoors, wonderful weather. This summarization, is very efficient, and it helps with a lot of things. And but one thing it does not help with is learning how to draw. When it comes to drawing, we have to unlearn a lot of the automatic processes that our brain takes to just give you. The brain makes stereotypes about what we see. I think of a good example. Well, one thing in drawing is that the way we perceive a face, our brain kind of edits out the forehead. But actually, the eyes are about halfway down the face. But when we're drawing, especially when I was drawing as a kid, I would draw the eyes about this high in my head. While actually they are down here. We just kind of like this part, whether we have hair on top of it or not, is not that interesting. So we just kind of forget about it. So when we draw, what we really have to do, what we're really doing is learning how to see something as it is, to trick our brains out of its assumptions about what we're looking at, and then we can use that to actually copy the light and dark shapes that we're actually seeing, that our eyes are actually taking in, so that what you actually have on paper ends up being realistic to what's in life. So when you look at it, it can have the same effect. So if you take something familiar, it's very hard to see it again as if you're seeing it for the first time. So one trick that we can do for that is to turn it upside down. And then you can actually that can help retrain your brain into seeing the shapes. So that's one thing to help with. You can also just use measuring for some of your main points. You can sometimes, I was taught to use part of my pencil or something, stick it out there, and sort of see what distance one thing was compared to another, so you could mathematically figure out different points. Now, if you did that for the whole drawing, every single point of lead on your page was mathematically precise, that would be torture, and we're not going to do that. But it's helpful for testing at certain points to see how much your eyes are wrong, or your interpretation of what your eyes see is wrong. That can kind of help you get back on track. Another tool is using negative space. So looking at the space between objects. And so all of these things are kind of training wheels to try and to get your brain on a different track. And eventually you can switch from one way of looking at it to the other way of looking at it. Just the same way you put your eyes in and out of focus. So we're not really going to have time to do for you to do this entire drawing with me in today's workshop, but I wanted to kind of show you what I'm doing, maybe get you started if you can draw along with me, and then we'll move on to maybe some more fun exercises. So yeah, so I'm gonna start some drawing. I've also put in some, not a lot, but just some grid lines that can kind of help. So if you want, you can draw on your piece of paper the exact same, kind of divide your page into 4 squares and go with that. I haven't been super exact. I didn't happen to have a ruler on hand. But, and then I can erase these lines after. Okay. So, I'm going to start up here. See if this, I've decided this is the top of the head right here. How many times does Glenn's hairline fit into, so say, I was going to do that, put that height. Is that correct? That's my guess. 2, 3, 4, 5. So I've made it 4th actually. Okay, so that's definitely off. So what I want is something more like 1, 2, and that. So something more like here. I'm just going to sketch roughly as I see it. I can always erase things. This shape here goes up around here. And we kind of got a bit that goes more this way. And then this is roughly our hairline, but it's not like super even. I should stop calling it a hairline. I'm looking at it as a shape. I want to start getting at some of my main points, so I have some points of reference on here. So I have not too far from, right, because I almost got 2 lines here, because I have, let's say that is roughly my line from where my squares are to the gray background. And then I want to estimate how much further it is. Maybe about here for the ear. So I'm kind of thinking about trying to break down the shapes that I'm seeing, like where something is a bit of a curve, and then another bit up here, and then looking at the negative space to sort of double check that as I go, like this gap in here. And of course it's not really a line, it's more like a gradient, like it really, and as I get into more of the shading, I'll do more of that, where it's like a little bit darker here, and then less dark as it goes out, because it's not very exact shape. The bottom of the smile is below the earlobe. The top of the smile is near the earlobe, though. Okay. So the benefit of stereotypes is that it makes a lot of things simpler, but just like other stereotypes, when it comes to drawing, they can prevent you from seeing what's really there. Probably impossible to get rid of stereotypes altogether, but to be able to evaluate them and question them is kind of what's important. And once you have your glasses frame, that comes in handy for to have lots of reference for the eye inside it. So The eye we know is entirely above this line. Or below it, rather. Sorry, entirely below this line. This shape here. Now we've got some sort of subtle line over here. I have, this is fairly close to here. I've got a bit of a shadow over here. I can kind of start to color in. About, actually this goes all the way to this line. This shadow, or pretty much, almost, from the glasses. Okay, and then somewhere about here comes more of a line with this angle. Okay, and it's going to branch off into two. I hope this is working. It's hard to judge the angle here. Has to get fairly close to the glasses. Okay, so think about the shape. Okay. Leave a little spot for the glint. It's hard to tell when you're drawing upside down how well it's coming together. There's an instinct to try to like check and see how close or how far off it's getting to being recognizable. And there's always points in a good drawing when it doesn't look like what it's supposed to be yet. And that is okay. Now for shading, a lot of it is just figuring out what is the darkest thing in the image, making that the darkest that you can on paper, and then figuring out what the actual very lightest thing is, and making that the white, the blank sheet of paper, and not coloring that part in at all. Everything else then has to be slightly darkened or in proportion. Like, let's see, so I figured the glasses are probably the darkest. Otherwise, this line here, and then when I like softly color this part, that should kind of taper off more. Yeah. That comes almost to the glasses, this line. Okay. So basically, everything should be lightly shaded. Except for maybe the teeth. Nah, it's not looking right. Try using the negative space to to check on some of these, and I think it's more like that. It's not really necessary to have like drawing pencils, but since I had them, I decided to get them out now. Basically, the difference with drawing pencils is that you have a lot of variation in softness and hardness of the pencil. So this is a 2B. HB is your regular pencil, right? There's an HB. This one is 2H, so that's even harder than an HB. So hard, H kind of means hard, B is kind of in the softer side of the scale, and 2B, or not to be, that is the question. And this one is a 5B, so that's quite soft. And I think I have all the way up to a 6B. So I would tend to use, you know, like ones with more B's. Higher number on that scale for shadows and stuff. Obviously you can get quite dark with even a very hard pencil, but it's just a little bit easier in that way. So the thing with doing the shading is that it's all about a gradient, about how gradual or how quick it shifts from one level of darkness to another, and then try to get your I guess, proportions, right? For how dark, yeah, how dark the darkest places are at each level of lightness is compared to the others. So drawing it upside down is not necessarily going to help in the short term make it a better drawing, but it will help in training your brain to actually look at what you're drawing. And that's kind of the point. So what I'm doing partly is looking at this shape here. It's the negative space. And comparing that to what I have in my source image and seeing if it looks like the same shape. And if it doesn't, or like looking at the points where it doesn't as much, that can help me correct. What's kind of nice about the softer pencil is that it's a little bit easier to erase. With the gummy eraser, what's nice about it is that you can just lightly press and get off some of the drawing without necessarily having all of it erased. And ultimately, it's really that gradient, that the way the shadow gets lighter, that tells you the shape. So I was taught to draw with by doing a bunch of, basically holding the pencil fairly far along this end of it, and doing a lot of really tiny circles. All those tiny little circles. Wow. It's a way to help you evenly shade. And then you just kind of spend more time in the areas you want to make it darker. Let's see, where do I want to make it darker? A little bit here. Sometimes I like to think of it as like sculpting, but just think of wherever I'm darkening it as the place where I want it to go deeper. So kind of like cutting, even though that's not what's actually happening. One of the things they used to say in class was push your values. Part of that meant making your dark spots darker and then, bringing everything down accordingly. And I'm seeing now, I think I could make these shadows a lot darker. And that just really helps. The higher the contrast, the more, kind of the better it looks, basically. Alright. Moment of truth. Actually, I'm gonna confess, I have been turning it over a couple times through this process off camera to like, so I kind of cheated. No, yeah. So, but now, let's turn it over. Okay. It's not flawless, but it kind of worked. And, yeah. Actually, overall, I'm pretty happy with that. Definitely could use some more work. But just, I'm gonna leave it how it is for now. And whatever stage you've gotten to drawing along with me, you can leave it as it is for now. And there's always, that can be your homework actually, to go back and work on the drawing more. Or, you know, just like skip on to another drawing. It's okay to leave things half finished. So next, actually, what we're gonna do is something, I don't think I exactly invented this, but I didn't know anyone did it until I did it. I'm sure, I know lots of people have done this before me. But for this, I'm gonna use a gel pen. You can use whatever you want to draw with, but I like to use black. I'm gonna see if this one works. Yeah, not bad. Okay. I'm just gonna also, may as well go from the same picture again, but upright this time. And, well, look, don't worry about source images to begin with. The point is, you get your pen down on the paper, you start scribbling. But then you can, like, keep scribbling in certain areas that you want to be darker. Like so. And just kind of have fun with that. And we're not as worried about accuracy this time. But it's kind of fun to draw something with kind of intentionally scribbling. And if one line doesn't go where you want it, that's okay, just keep going. Let's see. So, let's see. For scribble drawing, the outcome is not necessarily the goal. I first did this when I was really stressed out about something. I did it actually on a computer drawing program, and then I found it was a lot of fun, and I could actually make some really neat art out of it. And so most of my drawing since that day has been scribble drawing. And it's a lot faster. And I feel like it's a lot more unique, and it can get some personality into it. Let's see. It also does tend to make people look more wrinkly, so it's not always a flattering portrait, but kind of have fun with that anyway. Okay. I've kind of zoomed in, so I might not be able to get all the... leave enough space for like forehead and things, but that's okay. Yeah, but I like that. I mean, you can just scribble without even really trying to make any particular shapes and have a lot of fun with that too. But I kind of like to have, often at least I try to make some, like, even if it's a fairly abstract-ish or random kind of face or pattern. Let's see. So even if this doesn't specifically come out looking like Glenn, it'll probably look like a person. Whatever. I'm not going to worry about the teeth too much. Actually, this should come out fine. Without having left room for the top of the head, makes it a little bit harder to make it look like him. And I made the eyes pretty big. All right. Got one more drawing exercise I would like to do with you, and I have saved the best for last. So this one, very simply, involves drawing with your eyes closed. Now I'm going to, just so you know I'm not peeking. I hope I can find the page. I'm gonna try this again. But I will have to accept your word of honor that you will also draw with your eyes closed. Okay. So, just yeah, go for it. I'm gonna do scribble drawing, and that's I think what I recommend. But you can just start draw a face, draw whatever you feel like. Okay. It'll actually be fun to have this recorded because I'll actually go back and be able to see. See what my process looked like. I know what it feels like. So again, it includes a lot of sort of shot in the dark kind of guesses about how far a movement goes. How's it looking? I'm just gonna decide a nose should go here. And smile. This is my chin. Neck. I'm gonna go back and do more hair. These will have really glorious hair. Okay, now to see the masterpiece. It does have glorious hair. Okay. Oh look, I've got like a gypsy bandana. Okay. Not bad. Now, if you're not as happy with your drawing, but almost the worse it is, the better. Like, it's really fun to have to just see how ridiculous or like whimsical your face turns out to be, or whatever you tried to draw. Yeah. I find I think I'm moving further away than I am. Like, I kind of pictured myself more, I pictured it very differently than what's on the page. So it's kind of fun, but I feel like it also reinforces the importance of looking, of like what your eyes, the role that they play in drawing, which should be obvious, but then I guess it also shows what the, hand and thought can create a certain aspect of it. Oh, I think this is supposed to be one of the ears, and it's overlapping the eye. Anyway, I would love to see your drawings for any of these exercises. And yeah, thank you so much for doing this with me. And my understanding is that I can also be in the chat to talk with you and answer questions or talk about drawing or other things with you. And but thank you so much for coming to my webinar. I guess it's a webinar. Whatever this is. Thank you for coming.